Good morning, a slightly unusual start today. A glorious sunrise in the east shining on a Hammerkop, which Cheryl, Colleen, Ivy and PK pointed out to us was massacring what seemed to be an enormous explosion of eastern olive toads. Now that is the best identification I can give you of the frogs that are in the toads that are in this pan at the moment, because I can't actually see them. All I can see is their little eyes sticking out of the water, and there are couples of them sort of locked in enthusiastic love. Oh no, here comes a couple coming out of the water now. Here we go. Very enthusiastic mating going on. I think these are definitely toads of some sort. I would say that they're eastern olive toads. Anyway, welcome most heartily from me. My name is James and you are with Safari Live, brought to you by WildEarthTV. And on camera today we have Brian, who's about to go on leave, very sadly. Sorry about that, Brian.
Okay, James.
On the other vehicle is Steph, and he is also being accompanied by Andrew, the pack mule. And back in the final control we have Tara Dales on the knob twiddling and Jerry on the tweeting. So please do talk to us. Remember, this is a totally interactive safari. We want to hear from you, comments and questions to hashtag Safari Live if you're tweeting away, or questions at WildEarth.tv if you happen to be on the email. We're just going to stop here briefly further just to show you a little bit more about this pan. It's fascinating stuff. These Hammerkop birds, which the four of you managed to spot, probably many others as well, are hugely famous for their frog-eating habits. They're also very famous for their ability to build the enormous nests that they do, that weigh up to 100 kilograms. These Hammerkop nests weigh. They're kind of very messy masses of all sorts of different things, and if there's any rubbish nearby they'll often build with human detritus, and inside it is a very thermo-regulated warm little chamber where the Hammerkop chicks live. And it's an extremely unusual nest, a huge kind of pile of sticks and rubbish weighing up to 100 kilograms. So that is the Hammerkop, and I think that they're either full because they've eaten so many of these frogs, or they're not that keen to get their feet wet. You know, they don't have webbed feet, so they're not swimmers at all. They don't have long legs like storks do, so they tend to stay on the fringes of the water, and as long as the frogs stay away from the shoreline. There, look at the Hammerkop is now looking to see if he can catch one. As long as the frogs stay away from the shoreline, I think they're probably relatively safe. There were some lions calling earlier, and so thank you for that update. Apparently around here, Steph is further south of us. He has got some lion tracks, so we'll head down there and see if we can help him follow up on some lions. The lions, we obviously didn't do a full drive last night, and after the rain stopped, it was about 5:45 when we had the last major sort of storm that came through. Then the drizzle a bit after that, but major storm then. Those lions, the 5 Birmingham boys that were calling south of us yesterday morning, moved at a great speed, and it sounded like they were going into Arathusa, and they made an enormous noise at sunset, which is very unusual. It's not often that you hear lions calling then. We heard them calling again and again and again as the sun went down. It was really rather magnificent. So we'll see if we can't unravel the story of what happened in the night, either from the road and the tracks that they've left, or possibly more easily from the radio by contacting the other rangers. Oh, Hammerkops moving for the kill. The other creatures of note in this pan are the marsh terrapin. Terrapin, for those of you who don't know, is a freshwater turtle of sorts, different from a tortoise, And the marsh terrapin likes to live in smaller water bodies and puddles like this. So probably a marsh terrapin. Could also be the other species that we get here called the serrated hinged terrapin. But we wouldn't be able to see them unless we'd actually take them out and look at their carapaces and plastrons, which is the shell. And there are all sorts of beautiful noises around us. There's cuckoos calling, doves, of course, grey-headed sparrows, and obviously the frogs are making an enormous noise, a particularly attractive song. And Anna Marie, you want to know, and good morning to you, have we heard the hummercup call? No, we haven't heard the hummercup call this morning. They do have a not very attractive call. It's kind of a strident squawking noise, which I'm not going to try and emulate this early in the morning. But we haven't heard them calling while we've been sitting here, and we've been here now for about 15 minutes, I think. Alright, what I suggest you do is keep an eye on the Djuma Dam cam. I'm not sure where the zoomie is going to zoom, but keep an eye on this pan. I think there might be a little bit of interesting action that takes place here. We're going to head south down Twin Dams Road and see if we can't find some lion tracks, and with any luck, some lions at the end of them. Here we go. Ready, Brian? Marvellous. Let's go. Here we go. Good morning, Marla. You say you're impressed that I can hear lions over the sound of those frogs. Marla, they do make an incredible noise, but you're very close to the microphone. Well, the microphone's very close to that pan, and so it's picking up basically only that frog noise, I suspect, or largely that frog noise. We're a little bit further away from it, so we can hear what else is going on, but I imagine listening to the Djuma Dam cam at the moment must just sound like a great chorus of frogs calling. Ooh, there's a big cloud coming. I'm rather hoping that it won't rain this morning, although one mustn't look these blessings sconce, because we do need rain always, as much as we can get normally in this area. This is a pretty thick cloud, so you may have us running for home at some stage, but none of us felt like it was going to rain this morning. We all felt like we were going to have a pretty good day. What do you think, Brian? It's going to hit us.
Most likely.
Most likely. Just going to call Steph on the radio. Go ahead, Steph. He's got an update for us. Okay, copy that, Steph. What is your route? Are you going to just follow the track? Okay, copy that. Yeah, that's cool, Steph. What do you think it's worth my while going north to looking around, or carry on? I'm on Twin Dam. I might just go and check the truck lines further away. Right, so it's a single male lion that Steph is tracking, and the tracks are heading towards Biffleshoek Dam. So I think what we're going to do is do an about turn, and Steffi's on foot following them, and he says they're after the last rain. Now the last rain was about 12 o'clock this evening, or 12 to 1, and he says they're on top of that rain, which is good news. Now rain of course affects tracking quite badly. Well, not badly, it just affects it a lot, because the rain clearly washes away the tracks. Then it leaves a kind of soft substrate, and the animals then leave very obvious tracks, but as soon as that dries it leaves a crust on the road, and then there are very few tracks left. So it does affect the tracking quite a lot. Right, let's drive. We're going to drive a little bit quickly to see if we can't get towards there. Biffleshoek Dam. Go ahead. No, never mind. Right, on we go. It's apparently about 18 degrees Celsius. That feels about right to me. And that is about 65 degrees Fahrenheit. So quite a pleasant morning. A little bit chilly. Brian's only got 2 jackets on today. 2 jackets? Only one? Only one. Good heavens.
And a buff on as well.
And a buff. Yes, and a buff.
And long pants.
And long pants. Now, yesterday we got lots of great updates from all of you who pay a huge amount of attention, A, to the Djuma, to the cameras, the Arathusa camera, the Djuma Dam cam, and you also pay attention to the social media of the various lodges around here. And one of the things that popped up was a young male lion at Arathusa yesterday. And Clay, good morning to you. You want to know exactly who it was, who that lion was, and is there any update on it? I didn't get an update on it. I haven't had any further news from Arathusa, but I'm pretty sure that he was one of the lions from the Salala Pride, which consists of 3 young males and 3 females, and I suspect that he was on his own there because the pride was split up by a fight with the Nkahumas yesterday evening. Not yesterday evening, the evening before yesterday. So on Wednesday night. Nkahumas seem to have reasserting themselves in this area, which I think is excellent news, and they are very interestingly with Junior, with the young male that they're with, and the Birmingham boys have not. If this male lion that Steph's following here is a Birmingham boy, I will be quite interested. It might be Junior, except that I think that this lion was roaring, and I don't think Junior would be doing that yet. So, just a brief summary of what's been going on. The Birmingham boys, that looks like a nasty cloud. That's a pretty vicious grey sky. Anyway, we'll keep going. Fortitude, fortitude. The Birmingham boys have left this area unguarded and unattended for at least, I would say, well, they haven't been back here for about almost a month, I'd say. Now, that means that any other male lion coming into this area is not necessarily going to think that the territory is occupied. And so who this male is walking that Steph's following, I don't know. It'll be quite interesting to see. I think it is opening up the possibility of the Salatis coming down here. The Matimbas, we had a lovely update from Londolozi yesterday, seem to be carving themselves a little niche out of the Majingalan coalition's territory. And that's why we think the Salala Pride has come up here, because the Majingis, not the Majingis, the Matimbas will not tolerate, of course, the presence of those 3 young male lions in the Salala Pride. So it's all rather interesting at the moment. And I think the easiest way to, or the best way to interpret what's going on is almost to forget everything you've read or learned about lions before. Just observe without judgment of what's going on, and then try to overlay 1 or 2 of the things that you've read or think you know about lions and see if they fit. But the crucial thing is to not start guessing too soon as to what's going on. I've heard some outlandish things over the years, you know, people making wild suppositions about what they've seen and what they've heard and interpreting things in the most amazing ways. Sometimes they turn out to be correct, but often you just need to watch for a while before we actually try and, before we can understand what's going on. But that said, it's enormously fun to try and discover and understand what's happening with the different lion dynamics and all the animal dynamics, really. From, I think, Paul Rizzo. I'm struggling to hear the names. I got it right. I'm amazed. Phew. Hello, Paul. Paul, could that lone male be a Salala male? No. You see, if Steph was following the tracks and he'd only seen the tracks, those Salala males are the same size as females now. And I think that, he would have said to me, I'm following the tracks of a large female. It's very unusual to have a young male on his own, and I think that he would have said it's a small male. They'll be substantially smaller, those Solala tracks, than those of a big male. It's not impossible, but I think that they'll be substantially smaller than of a big adult. They'll look like lioness tracks. Lovely, lovely fresh morning. Petrichor smells all over the place, and fresh grass popping out of the ground with great enthusiasm, flowers blooming, birds are singing, and an enormous black cloud coming from behind us. And so the tremendous sense of expectation that abounds on a morning like this is just so wonderful. And you can almost feel when it switches to that kind of lull that occurs during the middle of the day. And by middle of the day, I mean we're talking middle of the day from about 8:30, 9 o'clock here. As soon as the heat builds. I don't think it's going to get very hot today though. Just in line with what I was saying, Sandy Train, you say you don't suggest predicting any animal behavior because as soon as we do, the animals go and do something else. Exactly. It's exactly what tends to happen. I have ended up with much egg on my face over the course of the last few years because of exactly that. Oh, it was a very unfriendly bird. There's a large raptor that's just flown off. I think he is on the flight. Well, there we go, hang on, we'll just get a quick identification on him. Always good to stop the car every so often, have a listen, especially in the early morning. We might get lions roaring. And I don't know what that is. It's got a strange white head. Perhaps a juvenile fish eagle. Too far away, I'm afraid, for us to get a proper identification on him. Yeah. Okay, we're on to the northern boundary, the Buffelshoek cut line. We're going to head due east towards Buffelshoek, vaguely in the direction of where Steph is heading on the tracks of the line. Here we go. So I was just talking a little bit about the Matimbas and the fact that they seem to be down at Londolozi at the moment. And Clay, you want to know if the one with a bad paw is there? Yes, he is. I don't know what the status of his injury is or how sore he is or whether it's affecting him. I can only think that it isn't affecting him a great deal. Two of them are down carving out a new niche for themselves, having been turfed out of this territory. I think he's absolutely fine, but he's definitely down there. There's not only one of them down. It's not only Hairy Belly, it's Ginger as well. So that's great news for them. I must say I'd like to see them again. I thought they were magnificent lions, those two. Perhaps not the bravest lions I've ever seen in my life, but certainly magnificent. And what's interesting, you know, we say that they've been thrown out of this territory, and we know that lions often do have very violent takeovers of their territories. But what is interesting also is the fact that perhaps, you know, they chose discretion as the better part of valor, and they moved off and went south, perhaps knowing that there was an area into which they could go that you know, was not very pressurized. So rather than stick around here for no real reason, they've cut their losses and headed into a different area. I think that happens quite a lot. I'm just going to get hold of Steph.
go ahead.
So Steph is still heading in the same direction towards Bivelshoek Dam. Bivelshoek Dam is, I'm going to be quiet now because we're going to go through a dead signal area. Then I'll talk to you when we're through the other side. That's the first time I've been through that hole and there's been no signal breakup at all. Marvellous news. So, the Bivelshoek Dam is about, say, 2 kilometers off in the direction that we're heading, slightly to the south, and then just east of that is the Cheetah Cut Line, which is our eastern boundary. Steph is in sort of to the right-hand side of your screen, say, over there. I'm probably about 2 kilometers away, heading towards, so we're kind of doing a pincer movement like that, hoping to see if this line is here. I've got a nasty feeling he's crossed east out of the property though. Just simply because those lions, when they're on a mission like that, when they're in a straight line, they tend to walk quite large distances. But we might be lucky. Birds calling. Now, we've seen young male lions in their prides. We've seen Junior try to mate with his mother and his sisters, which as human beings we find a little distasteful, or probably quite a lot distasteful. And Donna, you want to know, we've had a long discussion about whether it's possible or how long it's okay for lions to inbreed, and we think it's about 6 generations before they start to show defects. And Donna, you want to know what kind of defects those might manifest as. Donna, I think what you'll find is that there'll be much the same as it would be with people. There'll be cognitive defects where the brain function is not quite what it should be. I think also you'll get strange things like odd numbers of digits. So perhaps six claws instead of the normal 5, and that sort of thing. You'll probably get some fairly abnormal social behavior because of cognitive and brain deficiencies, where animals might be a little bit more aggressive than they would be otherwise, or perhaps a little more docile than they would be otherwise. But there would definitely, I think the first thing that would happen would be some kind of mental deficiency, and then after that, probably, odd numbers of digits, eyes one higher than the other, and ears a bit squonk, that sort of thing. What is that? It's a kudu and not a lion. Yes, then, a few weeks before the Matimbas were thrown out of this area, we'll just roll forward and have a look at these kudu and just have a listen again. They were seen mating with a Styx female, Kerry in Santa Ana. We don't know if they were pregnant or not, if she was pregnant. It would be about a month probably still before she would give birth. Now what's interesting to me is that if she does give birth, those Birminghams might be conned into believing that they are, that those cubs are theirs, because they came into the area around about the time that she was mated. So that to me is quite interesting. But Kerry, also what's interesting is that we saw, and this is something and I forgot to mention yesterday, we saw when the Birminghams came in here, we saw one male, one female from the Nkuhuma Pride trying to placate them. She tried to mate with all of them. I think she mated with a few different ones, and we're pretty sure that was a false estrus or pseudo-estrus designed by evolution. It's not a conscious decision by the lioness, designed by evolution to basically keep the males placated, keep them in the area, and keep them sweet, as it were, so that the Birmingham's killed 3 of that pride. Now, what's very interesting to me is that there has been exactly the same thing apparently going on with the Matimbas and their movement into Londolozi. One of the prides there, the Salala pride is quite a complex arrangement. It's not just those 6 lionesses we had. They tend to come together and then break away from each other, and there are more lions involved. But one of the lionesses there did exactly the same thing. So when the rest of the pride disappeared, exactly like the Nkuhumas did when the Birminghams came in here, one of the lionesses down there, I'm just going to roll forward, seems to be mating with one of the Matimbas, almost to placate them again and sort of stop the aggressive behavior that they have towards the new prides, which I think is very interesting. What do you hear? Oh. No. I thought you were saying Tara was trying to get hold of me. Sorry everybody, we do take our phones on drive, and that's because sometimes the communications go, and also they have our maps on them, and you've got to put them on airplane mode, otherwise they go. You just keep rolling forward, and Brian was hearing that in his ear. And of course he's got these enormous earphones on. Beautiful kudus these. We haven't even mentioned them, we've just kind of been looking at them and talking about the lions. They're quite a large herd, and just, I hope you're absorbing some of the atmosphere of this morning from wherever you're sitting. It's so fresh, and it is laden with expectation. The air is thick with water. I mean, my hands are sticky. Are your hands sticky? With sticky hands from the amount of moisture there is in the air. And there's just such a feeling of almost gratefulness from all the animals out here, it looks to me. Everyone is quite calm and peaceful. And I'm looking at the lens now, and I can see that it's starting to mist up because there's just a little bit of heat coming through now with the sun, and that's obviously bringing a lot of the water out. That beautiful bird you can hear is a black-crowned chagra. Unless it's a robin trying to take off a chagra, which is possible. Right, let's carry on. Chatting a little bit about mental deficiencies that could come up in lions after a whole lot of inbreeding. And Virginia in Kentucky, good morning to you. Very good question. Can animals get Down syndrome? I don't know specifically if Down syndrome happens in the same way as it does in human beings. I suspect it probably does sometimes, but remember, out here in the wild, if there is any kind of deficiency that would make an animal physically or mentally less capable than another, it will die almost at birth. So I think it's possible. I think it's certainly would result in almost immediate death though. So yeah, I've no doubt there are all sorts of different mutations and manifestations of genetic disorders, but normally we don't even see them because the cubs would die, or the cubs or lambs or calves would die at birth. Sometimes in an elephant herd you'll find a deformed calf, say with a squonk leg or something like that, and the elephants will try their best to help raise that calf. And I mean, many years ago down south in the Sabi Sands there was a young elephant cow born with knees that bent seemingly the wrong way, and they were just twisted and bent outwards. And for 4 years or so, she kept up with the herd, and they slowed down, and they kept with her, and eventually they actually left her because she couldn't keep up anymore. The joints eventually seized up, and they couldn't function properly. And a very traumatic event occurred where she was eventually killed by a clan of about 20 hyenas, and that was quite traumatic to watch. But you know, there's just, for the herd to have continued to try and keep with her the whole time would have been totally impossible. So it's quite brutal out here at times, quite brutal. While we sit there listening to that beautiful chagra and absorbing the atmosphere of those kudu, and everything seems at peace, you've got to remember that it can be pretty brutal out here. Right, we're now on the cheated cut line, the far eastern boundary, and we're going to drive slowly down this road and just see if we can't spot a track or two coming across either way. So Steph is off there to the right hand side heading towards us, and possibly going to, yeah, I mean, he should intersect with us, and hopefully he'll intersect with the lion first and then tell us about it. Just going to get hold of him now and find out where he is. Steph, you copy, Steph? Steph, I'm on cheetah cut line now, about 200 meters south of the junction. No tracks yet. I'll just keep driving south now. Okay, copy that, thanks. Alright, so Steph says, and this is quite good news, that the tracks have turned south. So they're in the block here, and they've turned south because of dam, so he's not just heading due east, which I thought he might be. So we'll keep going very gently down here, watching out for any tracks that there might be. I like to drive down this road like this. Helps me to see what's going on more on the road. So it's of course extremely acrobatic of me to be able to do this. Ooh, hang on. Yeah. So it's got his tracks. Okay, copy that, thanks. So he does have the tracks now going east. So we're just going to keep going down this road and see if we don't come up with the lion or his tracks. Oh, I think that was them. Hang on a sec. Something went across there. Not a lion. Not sure what it is though. It's just a kind of flattening. Possibly a warthog sitting down actually. There's some warthog tracks. And maybe he had a brief rest on the road there. Just bottomed down briefly and then pressed on. We'll carry on down the road. So we're trying to find one of the greatest predators, of course, the world has ever known, the African lion. But Michael, while we're doing that, you would like to know a little bit about the eagles that we get here. How many, where do they nest, when do they breed, etc., etc. Many different eagles here, Michael. I'll give you a list of them. The brown eagles would include the Wahlberg's eagle, the steppe eagle, the lesser spotted. What else would we have? We have the Marshall eagle, the African hawk eagle, the fish eagle, the brown snake eagle, the black-breasted snake eagle, the batelier. I think I'm leaving one or two out, even. So those are the main ones anyway. And you want to know where do they mate and when, when is the breeding season? Some elephant tracks on the road here. This is actually the breeding season if they're going to breed here. Now some of them are migratory, many of them are migratory. A tawny eagle, of course, is a very important one. Now is the kind of mating season for those that do mate here. The tawny eagle is resident, and so they will breed round about now. The Wahlberg's eagles just come back from overseas, and they will breed now. Steppe eagle and lesser spotted have just come back, and they are, certainly the steppe eagle doesn't breed here at all, and so they won't breed here. They'll breed during our winter months up in the Russian steppe. And so those that do breed here will breed now, and it's on a kind of platform of sticks in the trees, and the Wahlberg's eagle's nests are the most obvious ones for us to see, and so if we see one I will show it to you. There is one quite close to where we live, and occupied by two very, very attractive and very kind of model couple really, two pale form Wahlberg's eagles. I must just keep my eyes on the road, I mustn't forget that. Get lost in conversation, stop paying attention to what's going on around here. So if I don't look at you while I'm talking, please do not take offense. I'm not being rude. Just trying to find the lion tracks. This lion is definitely not calling. Steph would have heard him. Steph is, he's on foot, so he would be hearing any kind of noise from this lion. I wonder where his cohorts are. Why he would be alone. No lion tracks yet. We chatted briefly about the fact that these two lionesses, one from the Nkuhuma Pride and one from the Salala Pride, trying to placate new males in the area by mating with them. And Anne in Ohio, you want to know, is it a dominant lioness? Who decides? How does it happen that they decide which lioness is going to go and do the placating job? And I don't know that it's been studied actually sufficiently. I've never read about it before. It's only from what I've seen during this current pride takeover that one lioness has detached herself from the pride and gone off to mate with the new males. So I don't know what the cause is or who it is. I would suspect it would be the oldest lioness, but remember there's no, what is that? It's an impala or a Steenbokkie in front of us. I would suspect, Anne, that it's the oldest, but there's no dominance hierarchy amongst lions in the pride. So, it just depends on your size. So I don't really know, to be honest. It's just too gorgeous out here. We're looking probably for a young male lion of some sort here. And Andra Marie, thank you for your question. What is the oldest male lion ever found in the wild? Andra Marie, please just also remember to tell us where you're from. It's so lovely to hear and with the different parts of the globe that you are sitting on watching Safari Live. Andrew Marie, the oldest lion on record, was a Natasha lion aged 16. Now there are lots of people who will tell you that there were older lions around, but if you dig quite deeply into the stories, they very seldom actually know that is, what the case is. That said, there is some anecdotal evidence that there were 2 or 3 17-year-old lions in the old Sparta males down at Londolozi, and we think that they may have lived to 17 years. Not entirely sure when they were born. So I would say probably 16 or 17 years is the absolute surest kind of number I can give you. There will be people who will tell you that they've seen 20-year-old and 18-year-old lions. I would treat those as assertions with a great deal of caution. Normally, of course, 10 or 12 is about where they get to. 12 or maybe 13. 13 would be considered a pretty old male lion. In captivity, probably up to 20. But out here, life is tough, as you can see from those timbers. I haven't seen any tracks coming across here, and we're now getting quite close to the southern boundary. We've almost driven the whole of this road. We'll keep going. Badger tracks. Sure you can appreciate the magnificence of that colour that we can see. So we've got it almost stage lit perfectly from the back by the rising sun, which is on our faces, and then the incredible green of the spring vegetation and that magnificent grey cloud above it, almost black. I don't think it's going to rain. I think that's going to be may be famous last words, of course. But we're now right pretty much on the southern boundary. So we'll turn back along the road that goes sort of parallel with this one. Put your heads, everyone. Look. See the hornbill there? He's been fluttering around there for a little while. I wonder if it doesn't have a nest.
I don't know where you look at.
Sorry, he's on that knobthorn tree there, the dead one. And I wonder if he doesn't have a nest there. He's flying towards us. Oh yeah, I caught him in the corner of my eye, flitting about on that knobthorn. I wonder if there isn't a nest there. So you see the knobthorn trees that, well, lots of dead trees, of course, get funguses in their heartwoods that create holes for hornbills to get into. Go ahead, Steph. Steph's just calling me on the radio. Okay, copy that. Yeah, I've driven cheetah cutline. I mean, I'm live, but I'm pretty sure that he hasn't crossed here. I'm going to come back up Leadwood and then Drakensberger Road. Steph is on the tracks. You can still see them, and they're heading south. He is heading towards the cheetah cutline. I wonder. Okay, I think let's turn around and then we'll go up. There's a little road just to the behind us, and we'll head up there and see if we can't pick him up. It is well possible, that when I just turn around quickly to look at the camera, we may have missed the tracks going across the road. That's not okay. I shan't beat myself up about too much. Here comes a bit of rain, yeah. There is just a bit of a few dripples coming out of the sky. We'll head away from it now. Watch your heads, everybody. And then we had that question, lovely question from Michael about the eagles and when they breed. And earlier on in the year, we were watching vultures nest on Arathusa, and they certainly seem to be breeding during the winter. And vultures, yes, they will breed during the winter time. Lisa, I think that fledgling that we saw in that nest is probably fledged and gone off on his own. Vultures, not particularly seasonal breeders. No birds really have to be seasonal breeders, but obviously the more food there is around, the easier it is for them to breed. The vultures don't really worry too much about the seasonality. So, I'm just going to give you a quick picture of where Steph is so that you can be included in the tracking experience. He is now north of us, and the tracks, he's come through these blocks. Okay, now when that lion is on the road, he's pretty easy to follow because he's heavy. It's about 180 kilograms, and that is times 2.2, well, roughly say just over 400 pounds. So he will leave quite obvious marks. But when he walks off the road and through the block like this, they become very difficult to follow, of course, unless there's very fresh rain, so you can actually see where they've moved the grass, and then on the odd sandy patch. And that's where you need a truly experienced specialist tracker, because they're able to then follow those tracks. Anyway, we're chatting about the age of lions, and Dee, you want to know what is the oldest, or what is the potentially oldest big cat that we get here? Well, I mean, there are only two real big cats, well, three big cats that we get here, the cheetah, the lion, and the leopard. And Dee, potentially the leopard is the longest lived. Although that said, I mean, the oldest recorded female leopard here was the 3-4 female at Londo's, and she was 17. Not much different from the oldest recorded male lion. So probably potentially fairly similar. I think if you kept lions and leopards in captivity, though, the leopards would be very slightly longer. Cheetahs probably quite similar, you know. In the wild, I would say probably fairly similar ages. So, yeah, I wonder in captivity who would last longer. I think you could probably say that they all last roughly 20 years. There's no obvious kind of difference. Brian is just going to clean the lens. Steph. Okay, cover that. Steph, it's possible I was okay. They're on the job. Kudu running at high speed. Steph is just down here. I think they were just running because the sun's out. They're not alarm calling, so I don't think they're in any kind of genuine distress. So Steph's just up ahead here. I've got a nasty suspicion we missed the tracks going, well, I'm not going to blame you, I will take responsibility for that. I've got a nasty suspicion we missed them going east into Torture, which is the reserve to the east of us. Barbara, lovely question on a lovely morning. Are the big cats, or is there a difference between lifespan of big cats and small cats out here, as there is with domestic animals? zebra there is, but I don't think the way that you perhaps are thinking. I think the smaller cats don't last as long as the big cats out here. I think that the average lifespan of an African wildcat, of course, which is eventually what became all of the cat breeds around the world, I think their potential lifespan is probably no more than 6 or 7 years, maybe up to 10. And of course, because they're so secretive in the wild, it's very difficult to actually tell. It's not like with the lions where you can follow them from cubs to adulthood. You can, I mean, there've been plenty of these cats raised in captivity in rehabilitation centres and that things, those sorts of things. I think these tracks have crossed out. Never mind. And so the servals, caracals, and the small cats, I think you'll find substantially less than the bigger ones here. On the same subject of age, Marianne in Texas, your question is, do they have does the rule which applies to, or the rule of thumb which applies to domestic dogs, sort of 7 dog years to 1 human year, apply out here? No, I think it's probably a variation of that. You know, that's not so much a rule as it is a way of helping us understand how dogs age. So for a lion, I would say, yeah, it's probably about the same. For a smaller cat, I'd probably say it's probably maybe 10 human years to 1 cat year. That would probably be about accurate. I mean, just to, oh, there's some elephants up ahead there. Beautiful. So remember that the average human lifespan is a lot larger now than it was in prehistory, and lions don't live into old age like our dogs do. I mean, our dogs, because they are looked after by vets and us, and they have cushy lives, we find that they live longer than they would in the wild. So that 7-year kind of rule, I think you can only really apply it to domestic animals. I'm just going to quickly tell Steph that we've got elephants here, so he can keep following the lion tracks. He's not far from us. Steph, we've got a herd of elephants here on Drakensberger, about 400 meters to the south of the junction with Quarry Pan. We'll just sit with them for a while, and will you just keep us updated on those tracks? Sounds like those tracks have crossed over. Yeah. Okay, copy that. Yeah, I definitely was not looking at the road at that junction. Sorry about that. So he has gone east, I'm afraid, that lion, straight into Torchwood. Apparently very, very fresh right now. We've probably missed him by a minute or two. So where the rest of the lions are, nobody knows, and the radio's been very quiet today. Anyway, let's go a little bit forward and see if we can't get a slightly better view of these elephants reveling in the new dawn light. What we don't want to do is frighten them. And you can see I've already done that by starting the engine, so I think we'll be very cautious about moving forward. We want to create a bond of trust between us and them, so that eventually the elephants of this area will not react to our presence at all. We're getting there. It's got a lot better. I mean, in the year 2000, when I started as a guide, as I've said to you before, we didn't go into an elephant sighting unless we had a forward escape route. You kept your hand on the ignition key because the elephants were so irritated generally with human beings. And that situation is better than it was. We still are very respectful, very careful, very observant about how the elephants are feeling. We watch their behavior. But in general, they tend to be a lot more relaxed than they were. And that was no better illustrated than it was when we watched on Friday last week, exactly a week ago. We watched a young, tiny elephant calf and her mother, and they came so close to us without paying any attention to us at all, which was just wonderful. Feeding very quietly, and you can just hear it's so amazing as the sun comes out, the birds go crazy after a night of rain. Robins calling, chagras, doves, sparrows, something called the Steerling's wren warbler, the ubiquitous and very stridently loud francolin. You might be able to hear that Steerling's wren warbler going. Marvellous sounds those. So what we do there, in case you wondered why suddenly you could hear so much more, is that when we want to listen to the birds, Tara just flicks up the volume a bit, and now we are back to normal, so I can talk to you in a normal voice. So this is quite a young cow, and that kind of, you've watched her there do that sort of sloping walk. That kind of, she had sort of, well, in a, I think that's her calf. Look, so vicious. What a big boy. He's kind of play fighting with us now. Testing himself, seeing if he can make us run away. And now we haven't moved, you see, so now he's feeling a little bit less sure of himself. Isn't he sweet? Look at him. You can see him crossing his feet like that. That's a very common thing with elephants that are feeling slightly socially awkward, just like with people. There he goes. So sweet. And he's just enjoying this. This is entertainment for him. Now what the cow did when she came across the road was kind of, when males do it, we call it almost a must swagger. When they kind of swagger across the road, and all it is a kind of, it's a slight warning behavior that says, listen, I'm watching you, and I'm watching you quite carefully. I'm okay with you, but just don't push it. Now, this little fellow is now trying a different angle, and now he's feeling embarrassed, so he's going to pretend to be eating. Just learn to use his trunk properly. I think there's some others up ahead and to the left, but I doubt it's just these three. that little chap, perfectly framed by the bushes and lit by the sun. It's just wonderful. Look at how dexterous that little trunk is, even at that age. Picking up little pieces of individual grass that he wants. And the elephants will be very happy now that they're able to feed on the grass, because they'd rather eat grass than this heavy, woody material that they've been eating for the last few months. And now with a bit of rain, they'll get a lovely flush from the grass. This cow is probably about 20, and I suspect that the youngster is her first. She's not nearly as big as she's going to get. And we've been watching these trees taking an awful hammering over the last little while, and that has not ceased. So that's a young knobthorn tree, and she's going for the roots of it now. And the fresh shoots, of course. Nasty, nasty thorns on it. But not for elephants. They don't really seem to feel them, nor do any of the animals out here. I've seen squirrels and monkeys running around in knobthorn trees amongst thorns that you and I wouldn't put our hands near because they'd be ripped to shreds. So she is sitting about, probably only about 4 meters from the car, which is fantastic, about 12 feet if that, probably a bit less. Just having her morning constitutional in front of us, very unembarrassedly. Lovely, you can hear the thud of the fresh dung, which after the rain we've had now, and after the warmth that is developing today, I think is going to result in a huge number of dung beetles coming out in there in swarms. Elephant. That little elephant is now only 2 meters from us. Many of you will know of the existence of a calf known as a wrinkly bottom because of his wrinkly bottom and wrinkly skin. And Nancy and Lauren, this is not wrinkly bottom. This is a fairly standard issue elephant calf, very beautiful, better skin than wrinkly bottom. I don't know where wrinkly bottom is. I haven't seen him for a while. Brian, have you seen him for a while? No. Brian also can't recall seeing him for the last little while. I know Brent had him not too long ago, but I haven't seen him for a while. Elephants, you know, are not, they're totally unterritorial. So while they will often move in similar areas, sometimes they move off and disappear for months on end. And I was just describing that tiny little baby elephant that we saw yesterday or last Friday. I'm not going to move back, we will disturb them, so unfortunately you're going to have to deal with the picture that you have of the aerial. Sorry about that, that's my fault. Elise, we haven't seen that little elephant again, and thank you, it was indeed my birthday elephant, and I haven't seen him again. I think they're around Arathusa and Elephant Plains. I think that's where that herd is at the moment. Now this young elephant is probably rising too, so almost 2 years old I would say. And Barbara, you want to know when they stop suckling? Round about 2, up to 4. You know, they kind of will keep drinking a little bit until they're probably about 3 or 4 years old. But so this one will definitely be still suckling, but also moving on to solids, as it were. Probably, well, they'll start eating leaves fairly soon on, as soon as their trunks are capable of eating being used to pick bits of leaves, but that youngster will still be suckling a little bit. I'm going to attempt to move back very slightly. I just think that they may react to us. But if not, well, that's great. See, the sound of a car is almost challenging to elephants. So the big thing, if you ever come out here, look at that sweet little thing. If you ever come out here and you can drive around the Kruger Park on your own, nobody was going to give you too much in the way of instruction as to how to react when you see an elephant. The big thing is to understand that an elephant, if it gets close enough to you, often they're coming just to investigate and have a look. I mean, if they're charging at you, you know exactly what they're saying. They're saying back off and go away and don't come close. But once they get to within a certain distance and they're investigating you, the worst thing you can do is fire up the engine, because the engine, of course, is noisy. And often elephants will interpret that as a challenge, which you don't really want. You don't want to be challenging an elephant at all. So we were just chatting a little bit there about the protocol of cars around elephants, and look at that little thing. He's entertaining himself. He's now, he's close. He's about a meter from Brian there. Terry in Santa Ana, you want to know about the difference between our protocol of driving around elephants and walking around them. The difference, Terry, is obviously enormous. The main difference, of course, is the distance to which you can go to elephants. Brian, let's snip a bit forward. I think there are a couple more in front there that might be a little bit easier for you. In vehicles you can obviously get closer, and it's because the animals don't react to us in the same way. So they don't see us as a huge threat in the vehicle once they've got used to the vehicles. On foot, however, if we were to get out of the car here, they'd have a very adverse reaction. They'd run away or run towards us, which of course would be deeply terrifying. And that's because they see us as predators on foot, and in the vehicle they just don't perceive us in the same way at all. So it is very different. We can get much closer in the car than we would ever get on foot. There's another little one through there. Let's drive off-road slightly here. It looks like there's a bit of a track. These guys are going into some thick bush, so I'm not going to follow them. I'm going to go back to the other ones. And just a lot of you commenting on how you love that little baby elephant attitude. I think he's got a wonderful attitude. It's very, you don't want him to have that attitude when he's a big bull, though. But I don't think he'll have that beaten out of him by the bigger bulls when he gets too large. And Dara in Ohio, you say this little baby has made your week. It's been a tough week for you. I'm sorry about that. You should probably come and work out here. It doesn't get particularly tough. We love it out here. It's just rather amazing that this is my job. Dara, I hope that your weekend improves, and I'm glad that we could end your week with a bit of a highlight here. Stop here. Now, we're looking at a little elephant who's probably, or the bottom thereof, she's probably about 2 years old, and just under 2, I think. And Sandy, you want to know, they're born with teeth. Sandy, they are not born with teeth. The teeth come out pretty soon, but they're not born with teeth. And they do have milk teeth. They have milk tusks, which will come out and then fall out. And then they get their permanent teeth, I think, pretty much, probably about 5 years old, I think. Not entirely sure, but they're definitely not born with teeth, as far as I'm aware. Now, there's an interesting thing that happens with all herbivores, of course, and that is that none of them produce the enzymes required to digest the. Sorry, I'm just taking my jacket off. To digest the structural material in plants, so the cellulose and the lignin that comes in plants. Very few animals actually have the necessary enzymes to digest that stuff. And I think what's interesting is that how they get those bacteria into their stomachs. And what they do is often they will eat the dung of another animal, and that lines the stomach. And we did have a question about, is it true that young elephants will eat their mother's dung in order to, you can hear her calling there, I don't know if you can hear that or not. So the question was from Carol in Florida, and Carol, they don't eat dung in order to get antibiotics, no. They do it in quite the opposite way. They do it to absorb the bacteria into the gut. And they probably don't need to eat a huge amount, but certainly they're not born with that bacteria in the hind gut. And without that bacteria, there's no ways that they will be able to digest the plant material, huge amounts of plant material that they'll have to as adult elephants. You know why this cow is calling? She's making, I don't know if you can hear it there, a low rumbling sound, and I think she's making it because the wind is coming gently from the east, so it's coming just over our shoulders and into her, and the smell of our humanness is making her slightly uncomfortable, and she's calling her calf and just saying to the calf, let's move away a little bit. They just don't perceive us in the same way in the vehicles. Although now the wind's blowing slightly the other way. Here comes this one here. And as Paul has rightly pointed out, thank you Paul, she does seem to be keeping a close eye on her baby. Elephants are fantastic parents. They are very aware always of where their youngsters are. You'll find that the entire herd, which is around here, is probably very aware of exactly, or very aware of where all the others in the herd are. And so they are absolutely brilliant parents, and she'll be completely aware of where that little calf is, and the calf has now gone to join her. I'll sneak a little bit forward, and we'll give it a look. We'll have another quick look here, and then we might go off towards the western side and see if we can't pick up on some other lion tracks. And they're hiding a little bit there. Oh, there are a whole lot more in front of us now. It's quite a big herd of elephants. Yeah, the little one's been told to stop playing with the humans, get on with the business of having breakfast, which will lead straight into brunch, in turn lead straight into lunch, tea and supper. I'm just laughing there because I dived out of the way to get out of the way of the camera as it came past, and you possibly thought the car was being driven by a ghost. Forgotten entirely what I was going to say now. Never mind, something else will come to me. There, you can hear them all calling now. I might be deciding that it's time to go and have a drink. And when that happens, it's a fascinating thing to see. It would be a slightly odd time for them to do it, but it might happen. The matriarch will normally make a call. They will stop moving. Oh, there are two big bulls there at the back. It's a large bull, that. The matriarch will make a call. She'll make a kind of low rumbling noise. Everyone will stop eating and then they'll just move off towards the water. It's an amazing thing to see. I think that's a bull. No, it's not. It's a cow with big tusks. Huge herd of elephants. We know, I mean, they really are. They're on all sides of us. I'd say there are probably at least 30 animals here. All of the communications coming from that young cow, I can just hear her. She's off to our right hand side, the one that we were watching with her calf, and she's talking constantly to him. And I think that while that youngster there is feeding, he's definitely interested in seeing us. And I think sometimes, you know, with these guys here have grown up completely in the absence of any kind of aggression from human beings. I remember up until 1996, they used to cull elephants in the Kruger National Park, and that's what made them so sort of generally irritated with people, and that's why it took so long afterwards to regain their trust to a certain extent. And these youngsters, excuse me, bug flying in my throat. These youngsters have grown up without any of that, so I mean, I've no doubt that they have been communicated to by their parents about the dangers of human beings, but they're generally just a little bit more chilled out than the really old elephants in the area. And we often have questions about elephants' memories and whether they can remember. I don't think they forget anything, to be honest. I think if they have a bad experience, they definitely remember it, and it takes a long time for them to, you know, if they have a traumatic experience, it takes a long time for them to get over that. I'm just going to wait here and see what plays out. There's quite a lot going on in front of us, and I don't want to affect it by moving forward. There's a very substantial cow there. I thought she was a bull, she's so big. Going across the road with a tiny little one. Okay, now I think we can probably sneak forward without creating any consternation. Let's do that. Now, you may have noticed as we got very close to that little one just now, maybe you noticed the colour of his eye. And Marianne in Arkansas, you say elephants' eyes very often look red. Are they red? Marianne, they're not so much red as a kind of honey-coloured orange. But yes, definitely there is a red colour to them. There's a red element to them. Going to sneak slowly down this road. There is a tiny little elephant in front of us, but I don't want to threaten them, like I've said before. I just want them to be totally comfortable with our presence. The sooner we can turn the engine off, the better. two young bulls having a little rumpus. That is a vast cow up front. She is huge. Absolutely huge. Her baby is not huge at all. The baby's tiny. Probably only about 2 feet off the ground. And those are two young boys. And they will test each other constantly, just like two young human boys would. It's so similar. The more I watch elephants, the more similar they are to human behavior, I think. Right, let me just sneak in a little bit further forward so we can get a look at these ones to our right hand side. This fella is just resting his leg, or was. Just going to find out quickly from Ephraim I'm just listening to the radio. There are reports of lions quite close to Arathusa, and I think it might be worth going that way. Ephraim, can you go with the position of that sighting that you had? Ephraim? Ephraim, do you copy Ephraim? Good morning, F. Can you just go with the position of that sighting you had? Alright, I think that we need to leave these elephants now. I'll tell you why. There are 4 Birmingham males on Arathusa, but we haven't seen them for some time. We're quite a long way from there. What's interesting is Ephraim, sorry, excuse me, thanks very much, F. He found the lion that Steph was tracking just across the boundary here in Torchwood. I think it probably is a Birmingham male because there are only 4 of them down in Arathusa. So we're going to go that way. Yeah, copy, thanks very much, F. We'll head towards Arathusa now. Let's go and see if we can't find those other 4 lions. Marvellous, and apparently they're heading this way, which is good news. Okay, on we go. Wonderful elephant sighting. Thank you, elephant. We'll just head out of here. We just don't see those Birmingham males very often, and I would like to see how they've grown, if they have grown at all. So we'll drive relatively quickly. Not just yet, because of course that enormous cow elephant with her baby are not far from here. We don't want to go past them and create consternation. Another youngster coming across the road. There we go. Through. Just elephants dotted all over here. It's so wonderful. Alright, on we go. Let's go and see what those lions look like. They still look like lions. I'm going to go onto the boundary and then around on the boundary roads because they're a bit straighter. We won't be weaving around the place. You guys won't get seasick and Brian won't have to hang on for dear life. I spoke a little bit earlier about the smell that you know, the elephant smelling us, and the wind turning and blowing into the elephant and picking up our smell. And Barbara, you want to know, do we take any special precautions so that they don't smell us? Perhaps using a special kind of soap. Barbara, we don't use any special kind of soap. Some of us don't use any soap at all, but that's a discussion for another time. We use normal soap entirely. You do hear these stories of old hunters covering themselves in elephant dung so that they wouldn't be smelled by the animals. There's no necessity for that. We are very aware, though, especially on foot, as to where the wind's coming from. And certainly Scott and I, when we walk, we carry that sock filled with ash, and we walk along and shake it, especially if we think there are animals around. We'll shake the sock and it'll show us where the wind's blowing, and we'll try always to be downwind of animals rather than upwind of them, especially the bigger animals like elephants, which will become very threatened by the smell of human beings. But no, we don't worry too much about that.